Welcome to the Dumb Leaders Podcast, where you learn the lessons of lousy leaders.
Don't mock. I'm not a fool. Don't mock. I'm not a fool.
I just think that would be fun.
Hey there, it's Coach Curl here, and welcome to episode 111 of the Dumb Leaders Podcast, the library of lessons from lousy leaders. Today we're looking at leadership lessons. And the question I want to start with, have you ever had conflicting tasks and priorities assigned to you? So as a leader, have you ever had two tasks, projects, dropped in your lap that seem to be at odds with each other? Now, commonly I speak with leaders and obviously some clients, and one of the biggest frustrations they face is when they have been provided these two priority tasks to complete that could be potentially or ultimately at odds with each other. So I'll give you an example. I was working with a client recently and he was caught in this conundrum. Now, this organization is an engineering and manufacturing organization. Now, his immediate direct report wanted him to work on lead time efficiencies for the products that they have to import in from the manufacturing plants that they operate overseas. Now, the manager one above wanted him to focus on updating the product specs on the website. So the website hadn't been modernized, it hadn't been updated. It was quite a 2012 looking website. So, but the product specs hadn't been updated, and this was causing angst within customers and clients. So when he made his decision, he focused on what I would call pecking order and politics. So he knew that working on the high leader's request would potentially place him offside with his direct boss, but that not doing what the higher manager wanted him to do would place him at risk in the future, whether that's future promotions or potentially when redundancies are being handed out. And this company, unfortunately, has a history of restructures and redundancies. But let's be really, really clear here. The biggest issue is with the two direct leaders, especially in this particular scenario, because his immediate line manager knew the instructions from his superior and advised the leader differently anyway. So he knew that that his boss, his direct boss, wanted the product specifications on the website updated and finalized. And knowing that, he still responded to his direct report that his priority was to develop and continue his work on developing efficiencies in the supply chain. Not good, not good. And the leader that gets caught in the middle of this political power play is the one that's going to suffer. There's going to be a loss, and unfortunately it's going to be usually the leader that gets caught in the middle of this. And when you break down the two tasks are chalk and cheese. The lead time task, the challenges involved with global supply chains at the moment are immense. They're blown out. The costs are increasing. I mean, I've heard stories of products that since the beginning of this pandemic, products have risen by 30% every quarter. That freight charges have pretty much doubled and tripled in some respects. So the lead time task is eminently difficult considering the protracted state of global supply chains. There's so many external factors outside of your control. And that's not a reason not to do the task, but it's ultimately the only thing that you can be doing is looking at internal mechanisms, looking at internal systems, internal processes and procedures. And even with that, some of that would be purely theoretical. So planning for potentially a better time, but with no real idea or no real concept that those efficiencies would be realized. An incredibly difficult task at this particular time. Now, the specifications update on the website was a focus, has always been a focus over the last 2-3 years, from what I can gather. And it was continually being pushed aside for the more reactive sort of needs and issues that the organisation had been facing. Yet this was the one project out of the two that could immediately help improve client experience and could help have an increase in revenue. Now, an immediate lift by updating the specifications as we know them. So what would you choose? So as a leader, what would you choose? Now fundamentally, the decision was made on pecking order and politics. And the leader was going to devote his focus, his number one focus, on the specs update, the update on the website of the specifications. Now, of course, he would monitor the changes that are happening in the global supply chains and define his second priority as identifying those improvements within the supply chain or within lead times internally. So he wasn't necessarily going to focus equally on both, but he was certainly going to make sure that the specs update was the one that was going to be finalised and completed, and there was going to be progress in the others. Now, at the end of the day, it may not end well. It may not end well at all. So, but that was ultimately where this particular leader found himself. He was caught between this whole process of pecking order and politics. And it's something that leaders need to be aware of, because the pain is absolutely felt within their teams, and it should never happen. So the lessons from this, the power play happening between the two leaders should never happen. There needs to be alignment to company and business objectives, and everyone fundamentally should be rowing towards the same outcomes. The same outcomes. Now, every now and again, we're going to take some detours. Every now and again, we are going to have a difference of approach with maybe another leader. But at the fundamental basics, core premise of what we're talking about here is that every leader within the organization is rowing in the same direction towards the outcome. Now, if you're in that position, and you feel that as a leader your power is being threatened, and maybe it's an overzealous manager that you report to that has suddenly started directing your team members on what their priorities should be, maybe you've got to act on that with your manager. You can't put your team members in between you and your manager. You should be dealing with that with your manager and trying to provide clarity to your team and eliminate confusion. And there's usually a reason why managers overstep the mark. And that's what you need to be finding out. If you feel that you're threatened, your power is being threatened, your influence is being threatened, and that you have a leader that's fundamentally starting to direct your team, you need to bring that up with your leader and have the courage to do so. And hoping that you can deal with that from a position so that you're not providing that contradiction to your team. However, if you are a leader that's actually caught in between that power play, like my client, be very clear with both and advise them of the contradiction. So as your manager is giving you your role, advise them that, okay, your leader, your manager has just asked me to do this. So please help me understand what is going to be my priority. And really being clear with that level of communication and then asking around clarification for that priority. Now, if you're unable to do that, and if you are caught between this power play, the focus then for you makes what makes common sense. If your leaders can't do the alignment to the company or business objectives, you make the call and advise them. This task makes more sense in line with our company objective of whatever it may be, and I'm going to spend some time here. This other task doesn't quite make sense for me at the moment when there's so many external factors impacting that. Yes, I'm going to continue to monitor our internals, but the reality is there's just too many things impacting negatively on that other potential task, I have an opportunity to complete that one. So it doesn't mean you ignore the secondary priority. Absolutely. You just make the decision based on strategy. And once again, if your leaders can't, you should. Hey, thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Dumb Leaders podcast, your library of lessons from lousy leaders. Go check out dumbleaders.com for the full, complete library. And as per always, Tony Curl, I will see you all again next week. Bye for now.
Don't mock. I'm not a fool. And people who know me personally know that I am not a fool. But I won't get into the details of those. I just want people to realize that I'm not a fool. Don't mock. I'm not a fool.